Ever since I reviewed Bionicle Mask of Light back in August of last year, people have been asking me to review more Bionicle things, which includes the movies, the games, and, well, it's about time to get on with that.
People have been asking me to cover various Bionicle related things. The Metru Nui online game, the 2003 Bionicle game, Bionicle Heroes, and, of course, the rest of the Miramax Bionicle trilogy. So, will I be covering them?
Well, yeah. Of course I am. Why do you think I'm here? We're doing that thing up there.
Ah yes, Bionicle 2 Legends of Metru Nui. This movie came out in 2004, and the storyline for this year at the toy line was actually a prequel. The general gist of this prequel is explaining where the Matoran of Metru Nui came from, and how the Turaga we know as wise elders actually used to be young naive Matoran themselves, and at one point, Toa heroes. The actual LEGO sets from this year actually brought new things to the toys themselves as well. For instance, more posability. The Toa Nuva were always kind of rigid and limited in what they could do, but the Toa Metru, their knees and elbows could bend, dude. Well, I suppose the Rakshi could bend their knees too, but elbows, that's a new thing. They broke new ground. As a matter of fact, the new Toa were built with entirely new parts. I remember it being pretty exciting that they were moving forwards, but not sacrificing the gear system either.
Not yet, at least. Foreshadowing.
However, I don't think I ended up collecting many Bionicles from 2004. I did get a few, but mostly just a couple of Toa Metru and some Vaki, I think. Didn't get any of the more important sets.
But that's enough nostalgia for the toys, let's talk about the movie itself.
Much like the first movie, we begin with a voiceover from dear old Turaga Vakama, although at this point his monologuing over crystals and how evil and bad the nasty Makuta is kind of feels like a bit of a retread. But we are in a prequel, so either way, it's good to be back. The opening scenes of Bionicle 2 display a new character who looks suspiciously like Jala from the previous movie, although that does get explained later. Bear with me. This character is the last of a group of Toa, and his name is Lhikan. Throughout this intro, he is being pursued by two beings known as Dark Hunters, Nadiki and Kreka. I always really loved the design of Nadiki, but never owned the set myself. I guess I just kinda prefer the idea of him from the movie compared to the actual set. He seemed a little small in LEGO form. So, Lhikan is travelling across the island of Metru Nui, giving a map to several Matoran. And it doesn't take much to notice that these Matoran are the younger selves of the Turaga from the previous film. Although I must admit, these freeze frames with the names are fairly jarring. They just kind of take me out of the moment. They seem a little bit cheesy.
Almost like it's a sitcom intro or something.
On a completely unrelated note, I love this noise that Wenua makes. It's adorable. Anyway, before Lhikan reaches Vakama, he's working on a mask because apparently he's a mask maker, which is pretty cool. Little expansion on the lore, I'm fine with that. By the time Lhikan reaches Vakama, the Dark Hunters have caught up, and Lhikan, having passed the maps to the other Matoran, gives himself up to them. We also get a little detail that Nadiki was once a brother to Lhikan.
Your farewell will be forever, brother.
You lost the right to call me brother long ago!
Keeping in line with what we know from Mask of Light, this means that Nadiki was once a Toa as well, and he might have looked something like this. But I'm getting off track. I just like the setup of Nadiki as a villain. He's honestly more interesting than Makuta, I think. Lhikan saves Vakama from being dropped in lava, and Vakama then gets a strange vision asking him to save the heart of Metru Nui.
Save the heart of Metru Nui.
Uh-oh, looks like Vakama's tripping on forge fumes again.
He then witnesses Lhikan being taken away by the Dark Hunters, and he blames himself for not saving him.
Okay, let's talk about this for a moment.
Back when I reviewed King's Quest 8 last year, I noted that a character called Connor had this moment where he shouts, "No!" I thought it sounded completely ridiculous because of how posh he sounded when shouting no. However, I think we may have a new contender for the poshest exclamation of no. It's a tough contest, that. Jokes aside, I don't quite understand why Vakama completely blames himself.
It's all my fault.
Is it though? Really?
Vakama is not a fighter, he's just some doofy little mask maker. There's nothing he could have done to save Lhikan. Not only that, but Nadiki, who was a big, four-legged monster made of knives, picked him up by his feet and dangled him above molten whatever it was. What the hell was Vakama ever going to do in this situation? He just didn't have the reach or the flexibility to calibrate himself into a decent position. I don't know, maybe if he'd been a Toa at this point I could understand his guilt a little bit better, because he probably could have done something at that point, but as a Matoran, not so much. They're not that great when it comes to combat. Too short. When Vakama returns to his workshop, he opens a map and reveals a crystal, and in walks Turaga Duma, who totally isn't a villain, by the way.
Oh. Yeah, you can tell he's a good guy because he's got a name like Duma. Couldn't possibly be evil.
Duma has been asking Vakama to make the Mask of Time, which at this point Vakama has been unable to do, so I guess there's a plot thread there. Sure, why not? The maps given to the Matoran bring them together, and they find themselves in a temple where their destinies find them, transforming the naive group into Toa capable of heroic feats.
Well, not yet.
I'd like to know one thing that bothers me about Whenua though, the Earth Toa. They paint his Matoran self as a departure from Onua's betrayal in the previous film. In Mask of Light, Onua is brutish and has a low, deep voice, which I think is a point of contention for quite a few people, but I think it's worse here. Matoran Whenua seems more curious and full of intelligence, so it's disappointing that when he becomes a Toa, all that gets stripped away and he's left with another gruff, brutish voice.
Minor quibble, I suppose, but it is worth noting.
Vakama ends up having another vision, making himself look a little unhinged in the process, and the other Toa aren't really sure what they're supposed to be doing, so they decide to collect the Great Discs, as a showcase of their skills, I suppose. I don't know. It seems a little shoehorned in because the toys came with unique discs as well. They present these Great Discs to Duma, who basically writes the Toa off, leading the crowd to turn on our heroes.
Damn, that's cold.
Duma then challenges the Toa to cross the Sea of Protodermis, which is not so much a sea as it is a series of violent hexagonal pillars beating the life out of the heroes. Maybe I'm missing something here, but how exactly is anybody going to be able to deal with this? This is just straight up sadism on Duma's part. Did nobody in the audience think, hey, you know, maybe this is a little bit much, maybe we're kind of bullying these guys? There's nothing really that the Toa can do here, but Duma makes them out to be failures because of this. Oh, and traitors, actually.
Or are they imposters?
No! We are Toa!
Responsible for Toa Lhikan's demise!
I mean, it doesn't help that Vakama then ends up shooting a statue of Lhikan to help them escape a tornado that happens, because...
You're not really helping your case there, Vakama.
From this point onwards, the Toa become separated into two groups. Vakama, Nokama, and Matau escape. Just about. Whereas Nuju, Whenua, and Onua don't. The next portion of the movie highlights the Toa discovering mask powers in different ways, solving various problems. Except for Vakama, who is still a little bit concerned about the Mask of Time. It does become important at some point, but I have to wonder why Vakama would care when he's a Toa. You're not a mask maker anymore, dude. You don't need to worry about that kind of thing.
Okay, you know what? Let's talk about Vakama as a character.
I think one thing that really stands out about him in this movie is just how whiny he is. I never would have expected this guy
Listen again to our legend of the Bionicle.
to be the same as this guy.
I'll never be a real Toa.
I mean, sure, there's a bit of a gap in time here, but really? This is the same person? Vakama's whining falls a little too often into melodrama for me, especially with his extended no at the beginning of the movie. And throughout the whole thing, he continues to blame himself and put himself down.
So, we've all discovered our mask powers.
Everyone but me.
It's just kind of grating. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Matau, whose slapstick humour thing, it just falls flat for me, in the same way that he does, which is constantly. I don't think I ever found Matau's antics to be that entertaining, even when I watched this as a kid.
It just felt distracting, maybe a little bit tonally dissonant.
I suppose he does act as a counterweight to Vakama's crybaby attitude though. Might be a bit of a depressing movie if we didn't have a little bit of slapstick. So what about the personalities of the other Toa? Well, they have a few quirks. First of all, Onua is kind of a jerk.
I can't see in the dark.
Whenua is kind of hot-headed.
I That was a complete waste of time!
Vakama? Well, she's stoic, perhaps a little bit sassy as well. As for Nuju, well, he just seemed like the straight man of the group, the proverbial Zeppo Marx. Either way, I honestly never found any of the 6 characters to be that compelling, at least in comparison to Jala and Takua from the first movie, but I'll talk about this later. While locked up, Nuju's group discover a mysterious totally not Lhikan Turaga in their cell, who helps them find their mask powers. Nuju finds that he has telekinesis, Onua has mind control, and Wanua's head lights up. I gotta be honest, I'd feel a little bit hacked off if I was Wanua. It's kind of a lame power really, I mean, especially in comparison to his friends. I know, he could use it as an X-ray of sorts, but it's still really dull. On the other side of the coin, while under pursuit from Dark Hunters, Matau learns that he can shapeshift with a genuinely funny scene where he confuses his pursuers.
It's one of the few Matau scenes that's actually kind of funny. I respect it. It's well done.
Nakama's mask power means that she can speak to animals, and they befriend a bunch of robo-rhinos called Kikanalo. Vakama doesn't find his mask power, but he does have more visions, specifically of the Metru Nui Matoran being in trouble. But he's still really upset about not being able to find his abilities. He takes it really hard.
I can't even make a decent mask. I'm just a cross-eyed freak who has weird dreams.
Oh my god, get over yourself. Jeez.
Threaded throughout these sequences, we also have scenes with dear old Turaga impending destruction, also known as Turaga Duma. We learn that Duma is working for our favourite evil sportsman, Makuta, and then it turns out that he actually is Makuta. So it's a little bit confusing, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Maybe I'm missing something here.
The Toa eventually end up reuniting, and the mysterious Turaga reveals himself to be Lhikan, to the surprise of literally nobody in the audience. Vakama's pretty thrilled about this because they've saved Lhikan, who is the heart of Metru Nui. Right?
You are so misguided.
Except, Lhikan points out that the heart of Metru Nui is not himself, but the Matoran.
You had one job, Vakama.
They also find the real Turaga Duma locked up in a ball, which means that the one we've seen is definitely not a Turaga. I mean, pro tip, it's Makuta. I'm not really sure how that huge head fits behind the mask, but sure, let's go with that. The Toa Metru then move to help save the Matoran, who are being loaded into spheres by fake Duma for reasons. It's all a bit 1984. But still, the reason is pretty unclear.
I never really bothered to find out.
The Dark Hunters attack again, but with the mask powers they are easily held off. One little detail I really like here is how Onua uses mind control to overpower Kreka easily. Kreka is incredibly weak-minded and dumb, so it doesn't take much convincing for him to attack Nadiki. Especially in comparison to getting Wanua to sit down earlier. Meanwhile, Makuta decides he wants to unleash his true form, which, in the LEGO set, was pretty horrifying. I wonder what he looks like in this movie. And it's just the old Makuta with wings.
Oh. Well, that's a bit of an anticlimax.
I was looking forward to seeing those teeth, oh man. Wait, so where did his wings go in Mask of Light then? Alright. Makuta actually gains this form by absorbing his bird spy thing, as well as Kreka and Nadiki. This culminates in a battle between Vakama and Makuta while the other Toa save the Matoran. Vakama presents the Mask of Time, which is finally finished, and tries to use it against Makuta to no real avail. And then Lhikan, in slow motion, steps into the frame and takes the bullet for Vakama and dies.
I mean... alright.
I have no idea where he even came from. Did Nuju levitate him up to his death or something? I don't see what he was going for here. He just comes out of nowhere. He shuffles into the frame and bam, he's dead. Vakama then takes his mask and he moves on to battle Makuta once again. Although this time Vakama has discovered his power, which is invisibility.
Now here you'll see the stupidest sequence in the whole movie.
You know boss fights in games where you trick a boss into doing the same thing over and over to damage themselves? Well, this actually happens in this movie. Using his invisibility, Vakama tricks Makuta into grabbing big stone pillars and hitting himself with them. It's stupid. And you think after a few times he'd be like, oh, hold on, this isn't working, I'm gonna try something else. But whatever. He finally makes the biggest mistake of all by taking the biggest rock and crushing himself with it.
You know, I can't help but feel like this could have been avoided somehow.
He isn't technically dead because they need him alive for Mask of Light, but they can just seal him up with Toa magic because yeah, whatever. And with all that out the way, they find a new place to live in Metru Nui, with all the Matorans safe and sound. I'd like to put a little asterisk here and say that there's actually more that happened in between these two segments, but more on that in Bionicle 3. After getting all the Matoran spheres to Metru Nui, the Toa surrender their powers to wake them up, turning them into the Turaga we all know. But there is one last thing. Takua from the previous movie appears silently, which is a little bit out of character, but hey, voice actor probably wasn't available, so whatever. And he points Vakama to a fire Matoran with a broken mask. And so Vakama gives the Matoran Lhikan's mask, and oh look! It's Jala, and his face is transparent for some reason. That's weird. You know, I have to ask, does this mean that Jala can canonically use that mask's power? Or do they just hand-wave that because he's a Matoran? Whatever, it's fine, I don't need to know.
And that, my friends, is Bionicle 2, Legends of Metru Nui.
Honestly, I'd say I like Legends of Metru Nui significantly less than I like Mask of Light, but most of those issues relate to the choice of protagonists here. I know it related specifically to the toy line, but Mask of Light felt very focused in having Jala and Takua be our central characters. Even more so, it meant something when Jala sacrificed himself for Takua, since the characters were built up to that moment. Here's the thing, Legends of Metru Nui has 6 main characters in the 6 Toa. In Mask of Light, there were 6 Toa, but they were satellites in the orbit of a much larger story. It seems like they tried to pin the focus mainly on Vakama, but like I said before, I find him whiny. It doesn't make him a relatable protagonist, it just makes him unfun to watch. Especially without a proper transition to make him a more stalwart hero. He kinda just figures things out after he sees Lhikan die. I'm just not the hugest fan of his arc.
Vakama isn't the only issue I have with Bionicle 2. As a matter of fact, I don't really like the bad guys either.
First of all, we have Makuta, again, which is fine, but it feels like well-travelled ground at this point, and it's just like, oh, it's Makuta again, he's not gonna die because we know he's alive in this movie, oh, yada yada yada. The Dark Hunters had potential to be interesting, but are constantly outwitted and made to look stupid, so they never really felt that threatening. Krekker, specifically, is just slapstick. It makes the duo feel more like Laurel and Hardy than 2 dangerous hunters. It's a real shame, because I know this universe has potential, but it doesn't always manage to achieve it. Either way, I still like this movie, it's okay. It has quite a few issues I think, but it's just nice to indulge in this universe.
Although, let's be honest, the best way to engross yourself in the Bionicle universe is to look up the Bionicle music videos from the mid-2000s on YouTube. Now that's the way of the Bionicle.
Oh yeah.